Hi, I'm Sue Prentiss, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Trauma Society, home to our Trauma Survivors Network. I've had the opportunity in working as a paramedic in an emergency department, as well as in the field on ambulances, being part of a trauma program at a level 2 hospital, as well as running a statewide trauma system, to see that trauma patients and their families don't, or haven't, I should say, in the past, had a map, a pathway to follow to find the services, the structured services, and it's really care that they need in that survivor period to rebuild their lives. I've had some experience working in policy areas, not only with the American Trauma Society and our TSM program, but thinking about my time working in state government, running a statewide trauma system, as well as with the trauma program. And it's always been clear to me, and I've talked just a little bit about this, is the pathway, to a more, whole recovery, and an empowered place and a productive place where survivors and their families find themselves on the other side of that traumatic incident, requires integrated systems. And when I say integrated systems, I'm talking about access to healthcare that brings you into a trauma system from the time of your unfortunate injury and event through to a connection at a bedside, through conversations in your trauma surgeon's office, in your orthopedic surgeon's office, as well as working with social workers and case managers, working with your places and partners within the community. All of these folks and more are different stops along the way, but if they're not thoughtfully integrated, then we are not empowering survivors and being able to wrap around them in the best way possible to get them, to support them in their journey. I know the changes. I know the impact that your voices as survivors and their families have had on the care providers and the systems of care. It makes me more hopeful every day for what your future is and for the work that we do at the Trauma Survivors Network, in order to give you the tools and, again, the resources that you need to move forward to the place where you want to be.
Hello, I am Glen Tinkoff, president of the American Trauma Society and a trauma surgeon for nearly 4 decades. I have great pride and gratitude for our trauma care providers and the life-saving care they selflessly provide on a daily basis. However, we must realize that addressing our patients' physical injuries is only one aspect of their eventual recovery. Unfortunately, their time with us in the trauma center is brief and often does not allow us to prepare our patients and their families for the long road ahead. However, we have found that providing access to trauma survivors who have taken the same journey of recovery are best suited to understand and connect with our recovering patients. At the ATS, to address this need for peer support, we have developed the Trauma Survivors Network and have sponsored over 270 sites in the U.S. and internationally. Additionally, we have partnered with TandemStride to provide access to peer support virtually for our patients recovering from trauma. It is through the development of a community of peer support efforts that we are certain recovering trauma patients will achieve a better and faster recovery, as well as improved long-term outcomes.
My name is Mark Kalina. I was involved in a train pedestrian accident on October 12th, 2012. I lost my footing. I ended up falling down between the 2 rail cars, landing first on the connection knuckle, then falling underneath the train. I landed between the tracks with the train going overhead. I saw my left leg get run over, and I looked down and it wasn't there. I remember being loaded in the ambulance, passed out a little bit, woke up when they were transferring me to the operating table, and then the next thing I remember was waking up in my room. I remember as soon as I came home, it was like, oh no, this is the rest of my life. And it was a really sad and dark time. But luckily I had a great support network with family and friends and strangers. And one of the motivating things for me was getting involved as a peer mentor for other trauma survivors. I would have loved for a trauma survivor to walk into my room while I was laying there wondering what life was going to be like as a double amputee. After I got involved with the trauma survivors peer mentorship program at Metro Health, I was able to walk into patients' rooms, patients that looked exactly like me, laying there. Maybe there was a smile on their face, but they were dealing with so much. And you could just see it in their eyes, how much their head was spinning about all the things they had to figure out because of this traumatic injury. And I was able to say, hey, I was right where you were, X amount of time ago. And look at me now. The injuries weren't always the same, but you can really connect with someone because a doctor coming in and telling you, hey, there's going to be pain, there's going to be, X, Y, and Z is one thing. But if you're hearing it from someone that you knew went through it, you can trust it a little more.
Hi, I'm Thomas Stephenson, and I'm a trauma survivor. It was almost 10 years after my accident that I decided to become a peer mentor through TandemStride. And I wanted to do this because I've always wanted to give back and to provide hope and support to other people who were in the situation that I was in. For someone who's never had a peer mentor before, I would say that for the survivor, it's like being able to hit fast forward on your recovery and your life to see what your life is going to look like. Being able to share that perspective with them from what my journey looked like in doing that, and also helping them hopefully have a better attitude and outlook than I did in those moments. And it's a healing process every day, not only for the survivor who's currently going through that recovery, but for someone like me who is much further down the road in their recovery journey. And so it benefits both the mentor and the survivor to have that type of relationship.
Hi, I'm Matt Kalina, CEO and founder of TandemStride. At TandemStride, our mission is to create connections and transform trauma recovery. The motivation behind this mission is a personal one. In 2012, my brother was hit by a train and lost both of his legs. I've been fortunate enough to witness firsthand the strength and resilience it takes to overcome a life-altering injury. And so our mission of creating connections and transforming trauma recovery is to build the tools necessary to navigate life after injury. All too often, folks enter the emergency care system, and whether they're there for a few hours or a few days, they receive amazing world-class care from professionals 24/7. But the reality is, when most individuals go home, they don't always know how to access systems or what support and services might be available to them to help them navigate that recovery. So we're building a community rooted in lived experience with the survivor's perspective at the heart. All too often throughout my family's recovery journey and helping my brother and supporting him in his goals, we often felt alone and isolated and like we were the first people to go through this. But in reality, there's millions of Americans that go to the emergency department every year with a traumatic injury. We believe that connection to care, support, and resources is a fundamental right for every patient and their family, regardless of insurance, status, community, rural or urban. And that's why our mission is to build a platform to connect individuals coming out of the emergency care system with the support and resources to begin to rebuild their lives after injury. Saving a life takes a village, but rebuilding that life takes a community. And we are proud to collaborate with some of the most world-class trauma centers across our country. We have early adopters and innovators in this industry that are looking at extending care beyond the four walls of their hospital to address the full scope of healing. So please join us, support, share our work, and connect with us. We are on a mission to create connections and transform trauma recovery. We hope you'll join us.